Hello, guys. Welcome to yet another tech channel hosted on YouTube. Here I'm going to cover a few dev tools, products, and a lot of technical stuff. But the primary focus will be on e-commerce ecosystem. Today I'm going to talk about GraphQL. GraphQL is a key element in the microservices world. Let's see what the Wikipedia has defined about GraphQL. It is an open source data query and manipulation language for APIs, and it was built by Facebook in 2012. So, the problem statement of building this GraphQL is so simple. It's all about performance. The Facebook developers want to resolve an issue where they want to fetch less data but from different resources and show it on a browser in microseconds. So that's when they started developing this GraphQL and they're able to resolve the issue. And later they published as of open source, and it got evolved uh, so fast that many people have now migrated and started using the GraphQL framework. Okay, in simple words, GraphQL is a query language for APIs. For microservices, this has become a norm in this world. If you compare with REST API, there are a lot of benefits, and it can also exist on top of any API framework. So if you are using a REST API framework and you want to move and migrate to a GraphQL, it's so simple. You can just keep the REST API and put a GraphQL framework on top of it and leverage both benefits and slowly migrate completely to GraphQL. Okay, before moving into further details about GraphQL, first let's understand what it's trying to resolve. What are the benefits that the GraphQL provides us? First, as I said, it is just a query language for APIs. It gives the clients the power of choosing what kind of data they want, what are the resources they want to pull, and that is so powerful that it eliminates a lot of unnecessary data in the traffic as well as in the browser loads. What are the benefits? Ask for what you need, get exactly that. What it means is, in a client perspective, you need to form a syntax or query and exactly tell the browser or GraphQL what are the fields or what are the resources that you want to extract from the server, and only those data will be extracted, and the response will also be in a similar format that you have queried. That makes it so simple. Next, as I said, it can get data from multiple resources in a single request. In case if you want product and orders and you want to show it in a single dashboard, you need not query two, three different requests. With a single request, you will be able to pull all the data and show it in your browser. Next, describe what possible with a type system. It also provides an extensive parsing and provides appropriate error messaging to the clients. So that really helps the user to use it, and it's so friendly to developers. Also, another key point is it doesn't have multiple endpoints. It just has a single endpoint slash GraphQL, and with that, it can provide you all the data you need. And because of that, it's so simple. And also, you can do it without versioning. If you take a REST API, each and every feature enhancements will come with a versioning. But here, without any versioning, you'll be able to add fields and deprecate and add more types as well. So if you look at this example, it can clearly says, okay, so director has been added, and in the next step, you can delete it as well. Only the data will be eliminated, and now they're introducing a type, so on. So it makes things really easy for extensibility. Bring your own code and data. Here, each and every query that is being framed as a resolver. Okay, so you can fetch a data, a single field from a different database, and another field or type from a different source, say REST API. So, but the GraphQL provides a client in a concurrent way. So it provides all the details in a simpler way, hiding all the complexity in the servers. Overall, using the GraphQL, there are so many top leaders are using GraphQL, and it has evolved since 2012. Okay, so let's go into little bit of details of GraphQL. GraphQL has two portions. One is server, and then how we can handle the queries in a client. First, let's see what are the key elements of building a GraphQL server. It starts with defining a query. Okay, so within um, schema definition, you have to define all the types, say product, orders, they all become a type, and we need to explicitly mention the relationships between them and what are the fields and what are the type of the field as well. So everything, what are resolvers? So you have defined the schema and what is a query, and what are the different kind of parameters that should be passed to the query. So all the definition is done in the schema level. And what the resolver does is it has to fetch the data from some source. It can be a database or it can be a REST API. All those information are explicitly mentioned in each and every resolver. Let me go to an example and it will be very clear to you. Let's imagine this is the schema that you're working on. It has a query. This is the query that you're going to use to fetch the data about human, and these things are part of the schema which defines each and every type. So to fetch the data of a human, you are passing the data name human, and then you are passing id to fetch the specific data, and you are fetching all the information mentioned here like name and a subtype called starships. GraphQL returns this particular response. It fetches the human, and whichever data is matching this ID 1002, it will fetch that data, and all other uh, query fields that are mentioned here are also fetched. So something has to happen when you run this query, right? So the logic of fetching those data is stored in resolver. So for each and every query and also the mutation, you need to define the query with parameters, and you need to fetch the data from some data source, or you can also just manipulate the data using some functions or methods. So here, in the case of human, they are getting the object which will have the data human, and also the arguments, and these things or the contacts which are stored within the Apollo server or a GraphQL server. So here the data is getting passed to a method, and this method will retrieve the data from the database, and then it converts into a huge like JSON format, and that data is again returned back to this user client. And this is an example of resolver. So there are a lot of resolvers like asynchronous resolvers and list resolvers. So you can see uh, as per your requirement, you need to use a specific resolver to produce a result. Okay, so this is about resolver. So at end of the server for GraphQL, you need just these two things primarily. You need to define the schema. You need to have um, the logic behind each and every query, and that's defined in resolver. Let's move to the next topic. Client module. How to define a query and get the data from the server. As I said, it has to be aligned with the schema, and you can mention each and every field that you want to process. At the same time, the resources, any number of resources can be mentioned here. For ease of operation from the browser, they have provided a lot of modularized functions. For example, this is a fragment. So in case you don't want to clutter um, the overall structure of the query, you just want to make it simple, reusable, and also easy to read. So that's when you can use fragment. There are explicit external fragment as mentioned here, or you can also put an internal inline fragments. Let me show an example here. Yeah, so these are called inline fragments, but most of the use cases is about the external fragments because that can be reused, and it makes the readability more easier. Okay, so let me give an example. So there are a lot of GraphQL languages supported. For example, let me go into the languages supported portion. So yeah, so this is the different languages that are supported in the server part, and Similar to it, you have a set of tools for using it as a client. So it's mentioned this JavaScript can be used as a server as well as client. One of the powerful client is our Apollo client, which I will be deep diving and showing you a few examples. Okay, so if you're a fan of Java, there are a few GraphQL Java tools that supports it. So yeah, you can go through this and you can start using those tools. Okay, so what I want to cover here is now you have a fair idea about a GraphQL and what are the benefits out of it, and I given few examples and what are the key elements of a server and a client. But now let's go into one of the example so that you'll be clear about querying and also about how to start using if a GraphQL is hosted on your product or an external system. Okay, I'm going to show you an example from Apollo. It has both a server and a client. In the server, that's where we define the schema and all the mutations and resolvers. But Apollo server is more than that. It can it provides a playground so that once you start your server, you can you can go and run your queries and try it out with few other plugins and tools. You can also have a Schema Explorer. Okay, yeah, I will go to that in a bit, but now I will just explain you about how to build a schema. Here you're building a schema for book and then author. So the book can have an author field. So here title is a string and author is of type author, and this author is defined. It has a name and a set of books. It has given some steps about how to start an Apollo server. I'm going to show you exactly what happens in the backend. So I've taken the same example provided in the Apollo Apollo website. I've downloaded the project and this is what I'm running in my local. So let's do a deep dive into the server. Okay, so when you open the index.js, this is where the Apollo server is getting defined. You need to pass, as I said, resolvers and what's a schema and what are the data sources that are being used, context. So all these informations are required to start the Apollo server, right? So let's go and check what is the schema. As I said, there are the key things. One is the query. This is also part of the schema which defines what is the query name and what are the fields that we need to pass and what is the response type of the query. So here we are defining three query types. One is launches, which will fetch all the results of a launch, and the next one is a launch. You need to specify an ID, so it will return with a specific launch mentioned here, and then the user details. Okay, as I said, these launches are fetched using a REST API data source, and the user information are fetched from a data store area using SQLite. And this is a definition of mutation. So we are storing, say, creating the book trips. We are creating the cancel. When you cancel, it has to go and delete from the database, log in, and upload profile images. All these things are happening in the SQLite data source. So remaining stuffs are the definition of each and every type and their corresponding fields. Right, so I'll show what is written in the resolvers. Before going to resolver, I will show what are the different data sources. One is this launch.js. As I mentioned, this is a REST API data source that will be used by the retrieval process of launches and other stuff. Okay, so here it extends a REST data source, and you're mentioning the path and what is the data, or internally what is the REST API that is getting fired for each and every query. This is another API data source, which I said like SQLite is being used. It will provide all the details about how to retrieve the users, how to book the trips and cancel trip, and all those mutation operations. In this resolver.js, this is where the query and mutation operation logic is being defined. As I said, the launches, it will fetch all the information from the launch API. Okay, so and then it will return it back to the client. So it uses a launch API, and if you look at one of the mutation uh, here, yeah, book trips, it is going to use a user API to store those results. Yeah, I think we have covered the key elements of a GraphQL server. Whatever you're doing, from you can have your own client as well. You can use plain JavaScript to do the querying part, but Apollo client provides a lot of benefits and features. If you want, you can go ahead and use Apollo client as well. So it is similar to it is a React application. So and it will have the queries that is being fired. You can it one of the features is you can extend the query as well in the Apollo client. So I'm not going into details about what is the feature available in Apollo client. You please go ahead and do your analysis and research on that part. But this is how it works. You need to whatever is being fired in the playground, the same queries are getting fired in the backend. In case if you want to see launches, this is the query that is being fired, and the results are getting displayed in the UI. Okay, so that's all on the coding part. Let's move to the next topic. So you can select add to cart. So once you add to cart, it should be available and you can book it. Yeah, so this is how the client and the server of GraphQL are working. So let me give you one more example about how to use a system which is having GraphQL. For this example, I have taken BigCommerce As an example, because BigCommerce is a SaaS e-commerce platform where you can go and create your store, define your products, and then start using the website in minutes. So that easy. Okay, anyway, so what they have done, they are using GraphQL, and they have a headless e-commerce framework as well. Now they have transformed that to a GraphQL, and this is the GraphQL Explorer, which is available to the public. So if you want to use a headless GraphQL from BigCommerce, you can define your store and you can just see what are the fields that are exposed in GraphQL and how the different types are related, right? So for this, there is a plugin available for GraphQL called Graphql Voyager. So you can check it out yourself. It will extract the data from the schema and provide this visually. So it's easy to understand. So once you know the relationships, okay, this is a query and how the complete schema is built, then you can go and run those queries. So if I want to fetch the data of a customer, all I need to do, okay, I know this customer. If I want to fetch the entity ID, name, company, email address, I can very much fetch all the information apart from store credit, which is a type. So I need to define and subtype to query those data. Okay, so I am querying the customer, and also I am querying some data from the site object. So underneath site, I am fetching the category tree, and I'm filtering one of the product and getting some fields from there. It's been defined in the fragment. Once you run this query, yeah. So this is the GraphQL Playground, which is associated with one of my store in BigCommerce. So I am defining the query to fetch the customer details, first name, last name, and email, and provided the next query is site. Underneath the site, that is category tree. I'm just fetching the entity ID and also filtering this product, the first three products, and getting all the product fields from there. And it just fetches those information. Okay, so this is the power of GraphQL. So when you start, or when you want to use the GraphQL, the key idea is to go and see how the schema explorer looks like and understand the schema. And once you understand the schema, you can right away go and form the queries and execute it. So hope you had a bit of learning about GraphQL in this session. Um, you need to have hands-on to understand the complete picture. Try to go into this Apollo client um, and try to do the tutorial that was presented there. It was so intuitive and easy to get it started. Play around different queries, play around different mutations, then you will get the hang of it, right? And if you want to go into the server mode, all you need to do is define the schema in a proper way, and then you need to define the data sources and how to call and furnish the data or store the data in the resolver. Okay, so these are the steps that you need to follow. I've given all those uh, key steps in my blog. In case if you want to browse through, it's all there. And still you may come up with a lot of queries about how to utilize GraphQL. Please don't hesitate to comment. I will try to answer each and every question or in my YouTube comments. Hope you had a wonderful time. It's a bit long, but definitely it requires this explanation to understand the GraphQL. Just go and try it out. It will be a great asset to your technical abilities. See you again with another interesting session about technical stuff. Let's meet again. See you. Bye.